I almost never dream either. Am I the only me in the multiverse? Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about the 28th film in the MCU, Marvel's 2022 sci-fi horror superhero sequel, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, ranked lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness stars Benedict Cumberbatch, Elizabeth Olsen, and Xochitl Gomez, and was directed by Sam Raimi. It tells the continuing story of Doctor Strange, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, who travels across the multiverse to protect a teenager from an unexpected threat. Doctor Strange is a character that I've got mixed feelings on. I found his introductory film, and just his introduction in general, to be fairly underwhelming, or middling at best. So he didn't get off to the best start for me, but I haven't minded him filling the side character role in a number of other MCU movies since. I'm still not entirely sure if that's because he's legitimately grown on me, or if it just means I can only handle him in small doses. That said, I wasn't a huge fan of his role or characterization in Spider-Man No Way Home, so that recent outing, combined with my feelings about the first Doctor Strange film, had me not overly excited for the sequel. I do generally enjoy the mind-bending quality of multiverse stories, though, so I was hopeful that I'd at least enjoy Multiverse of Madness a bit more than the first film. When I think of Doctor Strange, I think of, well, strange. I don't have any comic book background with this character, but his first movie can probably best be described as out there. It still follows the fairly standard MCU structure, but the visuals and concepts were frequently trippy and a little weird. We've gotten more of a taste of this weirdness in the MCU with the expansion on the multiverse concept in the last phase and a half, but Doctor Strange 2 is also very weird. Probably more so than the first movie, but in different ways. The places they go, the variety of creatures they encounter, the ways in which they solve problems, it's all quite strange. This strangeness is fitting for the film, and I think works better than it did in the first movie for two reasons. The first is the multiverse. So, 2016's Doctor Strange introduced the concept, and we got a few glimpses of it in that film, but it wasn't really significantly put to use. The sequel, on the other hand, features genuine multiversal travel, and it adds to the oddity and fun, because there are so many things that can happen here. But it's all delivered in fairly small doses. We get flashes of the immense possibility of the multiverse, but end up spending most of the time in universes that aren't really that fundamentally different from the universe we already know. There are obviously differences. Red means go, and we have some cameo-laden character appearances that Marvel fans are sure to geek out over, but the same structural basics are always there. That makes it easier for us to understand the universe, but considering the potential for infinite universes, the multiverse is kind of underwhelmingly utilized here, and certainly doesn't constitute madness. That madness comes along with the second reason why the strangeness of this film works: Sam Raimi. We've had a few instances where a director's style has really come through in the MCU. James Gunn with Guardians of the Galaxy, Taika Waititi with Thor Ragnarok, and now Sam Raimi has joined that group. He brings some of the superhero campiness we recognize from the Spider-Man trilogy, but mixes it with his unique brand of campy, gruesome horror. This film's got a weird tonal mix at times, but it's very much a horror movie. The images we see, chunks of the plot, it's gruesome and bloody by MCU standards, and also quite dark. It's basically Evil Dead meets the MCU, and it's bizarre. It works, but probably not for everybody. I enjoyed the sequel more than the first film. Maybe it's the multiverse, maybe it's the Raimi-infused horror, or maybe it's what I mentioned before, small doses of Doctor Strange. We still get plenty of him in this film, but he's rarely alone here. In fact, most of the time, he's with a new-to-the-MCU character, America Chavez, who's an integral part of the story and also really effective at counterbalancing Strange's personality. But I would argue that this is as much a Scarlet Witch movie as it is a Doctor Strange one. Much of the storyline and character arc focus is devoted to her, which is not really what I was expecting. So, this film marks the MCU's first full integration of the Disney Plus shows into the movies. There have been minor references and characters from the shows in a few of the past films, but the main plot of this movie relies on information, characters, and plot lines delivered in WandaVision. You can get by without having seen the show, but it would be more than a little confusing. And I gotta say, I'm not sure I like the precedent that's being set here. People already have to watch nearly 30 movies to understand what's happening in this franchise, and now the TV shows are officially part of that homework too. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. The biggest pro has gotta be the horror elements. I'll admit that I was not expecting this to be as dark and creepy as it was. Sam Raimi always infuses horror into his movies. Even the Spider-Man trilogy had horror-esque elements, so I didn't doubt that this would have some bits of horror, but this is pretty intense for the MCU. The third act delivers some very Evil Dead-inspired campy horror moments, but even the second act has some gruesomeness to it, with Wanda walking around like post-prom Carrie. At times, the campy horror feels out of sync with the superhero sci-fi multiverse side of the story, but it somehow works with the general weirdness of Doctor Strange. On the con side, the biggest issue is the pacing. This is a pretty frenetic film at times. It throws you right into things, and for much of the runtime, continuously bounces along from one wild set piece to the next, without giving you much time to breathe. It does have occasional slower moments, but they're almost too slow by comparison. There's an awful lot of description and exposition that goes on during these parts of the movie, and it somehow makes it drag a bit in between the otherwise relentless freneticism. Con number 2 is how underutilized the multiverse is. Now, this isn't a huge deal for me, and I'm sure many people won't even consider this a problem, but for a movie named Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, there wasn't all that much madness going on with the multiverse. We got a glimpse of how unique and creative the multiverse could be, but then just ended up in a few universes that fairly closely paralleled the one we already know. There's some cool stuff, but it just doesn't come close to reaching its full potential. Or maybe I've just been spoiled by everything everywhere all at once. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness 3 out of 5 paws. There's some good horror elements here, and I think the sequel is an improvement over the first film, but it's an unevenly paced series of wild set pieces that'll be a bit confusing to people who haven't seen WandaVision yet. I would recommend Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness to fans of Doctor Strange. If you liked his first movie and his appearances in other MCU films, you're probably gonna like him here too. This movie has a different kind of out-there-ness from the first film, but it's pretty weird again, so fans that like that will get plenty more here. People who like Sam Raimi's style of campy horror will also be in for a treat, as will fans of WandaVision. On the flip side though, if you haven't seen WandaVision, pretty big parts of this movie are going to be confusing, so I'd highly recommend watching that show first. If you liked Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, I've obviously got to recommend the first Doctor Strange movie. That film introduces the character and what he's capable of doing, but it also provides important background for some of the emotional arcs found in this film. If you're looking for another multiverse movie, you've definitely got to check out Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's a wild, chaotically creative movie that takes the multiverse concept to the extreme, and also does something that's quite similar to the dream walking seen in this film. And if you want some more of Sam Raimi's off-kilter, campy horror, you might want to watch Drag Me to Hell. It's got a bizarre tonal mix, some wild sequences, and some great, gruesomely goofy effects. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1. Have you seen Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, who's a director that you think always puts a very distinct stamp on their films? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you've done so already, please hit subscribe while you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.